Hello everyone, welcome back to ADAMAS Learning. My name is Hanif Mohammed. I'm the CEO here at Asian Institute of Design. I'm sure everyone has, during this COVID period, have been in at least one webinar, but in any case, some ground rules. Kindly use the question and answer box for all the questions to the speakers. The moderator would ask the speaker at his convenience. If your line drops at any time, please use the same link to come back in. If by whatever reason you're not able to come back in, we are live on YouTube and we'll also be mailing your recorded version. Asian Institute of Design is a higher education institution, progressive higher education institution offering undergraduate and professional diploma in art, design, and tech. We started as a first dedicated gaming institute in India. We are an affiliated college of Bengaluru North University now. We've been churning out professionals for the ABGC and the design sectors. Our alumni have been contributing to leading blockbuster movies, AAA title games, been part of credits of major Oscar-winning titles like The Jungle Book, been part of development teams of AAA titles like the GTA, which is the world's biggest game so far. They've been credits on Red Dead Redemption and Call of Duty and many more. Our alumni working across the world in Canada, Finland, Singapore, Malaysia, and so on. We have students from across India. We have international students. We have students from Korea, Japan, Russia, Netherlands, and so on. We are a fine blend between industry and academia. Our faculty comes from industry. They've been working with studios like DreamWorks, Luxia, Eccentrics, and so on. Been part of few European funded projects, like which is the Erasmus Plus projects, like the MELIS, EQMB, which are capacity building in nature. For more details, please kindly log on to Asian Institute of Design.in. We can also follow us on our social media. Aided learning is a platform. Education and pedagogy as a sector has been constantly evolving. Aided learning is a platform created by Asian Institute of Design to connect reputed educational institutions and industry experts worldwide to create an open forum to achieve a common and accessible knowledge pool. The Aided Learning series will hold webinars, conclaves, various other forms of knowledge sharing, making merits expertise accessible to the stakeholders with the concept of knowledge for everyone. We are happy to be presenting this particular session with the Bengaluru North University. We have been supported by Middle East College as always. Then we have the Martin Luther Christian University, Shillong, ORF, and ADAMAS University, Kolkata. We've been partnered with Oberoi and Global Observatory, Spain, Smart Knowledge Alliance, and a project called Diesel. Let me introduce you to today's moderator, Dr. Kiran Gopakumar. He's a PhD from London School of Economics and Political Science, MPhil from Jawaharlal University. He has a vast experience and he's been playing leading national and international roles in higher education management, teaching, research, strategic policy development. And he's also holds an experience in heading implementing government projects and e-governance. He's currently the Dean of Middle East College, Sultanate of Oman. Middle East College is the leading higher education institution, Sultanate of Oman, accredited under the OAAA. They offer undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in engineering, business, technology, logistics management, with partnership with Coventry University, UK, and Breda University, Netherlands. Today is the fourth edition of Aided Learning. We've been getting you all different kinds of subjects. Maybe today we are with skill development in India, NEP 2020 way forward. Let me take this opportunity to welcome today's speakers, Professor Glenn Kharkongor, Chancellor of Martin Luther Christian University, Professor T.D. Kemparaju, Vice Chancellor of Bengaluru North University. We have Dr. Leena Chandran Wadia, Senior Fellow of the Observer ORF, and also the member of the draft committee of NEP. And we have Professor Ujjwal Chowdhury, the Pro VC Dean, School of Media, Communication and Fashion at ADAMAS University, Kolkata. Hand over to Dr. Kiran to take the session forward.
Thank you very much, Hanif. It's very quite impressive to see the kind of activities that the Asian Institute of Design is doing and its partnership with the Global Observatory, other international partners, and the various projects, including diesel. Quite impressive, actually. I'd also like to congratulate you on choosing this very important topic of skills. Everybody's talking about higher education and school education, but I think it's very important that we focus on skills. And so I'd like to congratulate you on choosing the topic and for getting together a distinguished group of eminent panelists. So really, congratulations to you on this. Let me also take this opportunity to welcome Professor Glenn, Professor Kemparaju, Dr. Leena, and Professor Ujjwal. Thank you very much for joining this session. I don't think there is any need to really discuss much regarding the significance of skill development in India. Some of the studies have shown that the proportion of formally skilled workers in India ranges between 4 to 7%. The most optimistic one says 10%. So it's really, really low compared to some of the other countries like China, where it is 24%. In the US, it's 52%, UK 68%, Germany 75%, Japan 80%, South Korea 96%. So we're far behind in terms of where we should be in terms of skilled population. India has been trying out different methods, different institutional mechanisms, the skill development mission, but we still need to do much more. It was always felt that a more comprehensive approach or a more pervasive approach across the various tiers of education would be very important if we have to focus on skill development. And in the current context, with our Honorable Prime Minister taking up themes such as the Atmanirbhar and the Make in India, and also the focus on economic development and job creation, it is extremely important that we focus on skill development. And Government of India has come up with the new education policy that seems to bring in a new impetus to skill education, in education in general, and with a very specific focus on skill development. And we are very extremely happy and lucky to have with us Dr. Leena Chandran Wadia, a Senior Fellow, ORF, the Observer Research Foundation. She was also the NEP Drafting Committee member. Dr. Wadia received a PhD in physics from the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. Her thesis work and subsequent postdoctoral research at ETH Zurich was in the area of high-performance computing. She has been a researcher in India and abroad, including the NCST Mumbai, now the CDAC, the Center for Development of Advanced Computing, EPF Lausanne and CERN in Switzerland and in IIT Mumbai. The primary focus of her work has been on higher education in India, and she has produced several in-depth research reports advocating reforms in science education, engineering education, medical education, and vocational education. Apart from the research and papers that she has written on the subject areas that she has graduated on. She has also played a key role in the preparation of the Karnataka State Education Policy in 2015. So as a member of the NEP Drafting Committee, my question to you, Dr. Leena, is what do you think are the challenges that institutions will face in complying with the provisions of the policy and aligning with the opportunities that the policy has identified and is providing to these institutions? Dr. Leena.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran. for this introduction. I just want to, I'll dive straight into the topic. So, we haven't had a very good history of vocational education, as we all know. But in the last decade, since about 2008, when the National Skill Development Council for the Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, was set up, and then NSDC was formed, and then, Prime Minister Modi set up MSDE and so on. In the last decade, we have created considerable infrastructure for skilling. And this is the reason why our formal skilled numbers are slowly moving up, but really only very slowly. So if, for example, if you look at the periodic labor force survey, it says 3%. You mentioned 4 to 7%. So but we have this infrastructure now. So when the Dr. Kasurirangan committee was looking at what to do with vocational education, we realized that the only option was to integrate it completely with mainstream school and college education, because there was so much of reluctance to accept. There was so much of problems with acceptability of TVET, it's not just in India, it's everywhere in the world. It's seen as an inferior option, and comes back from the old days of blue collar jobs versus white collar jobs. Most people don't understand that those distinctions are blurring so much, with so many jobs in industry 4.0 and so on. And also, an institution like Asian Institute of Design, there are just so many high profile jobs doing interesting things in filmmaking and so on. That's not, restricted only to universities. But so we did that. So we have, the policy says now that vocational education should be integrated. What does that mean? That means that we have up to 280,000 secondary schools in the country. And we have about 50,000 higher education institutions. So we are saying that we are bringing them on board as providers of skill development. Now, this word skill development we use in India is in a general context, where we are mostly only referring to practical skilling. But from the point of view of education, what we want is to prepare a student for life, which means developing their personalities, developing their competencies, giving them some theoretical knowledge about the occupations that they are going to take, and of course, giving them some liberal education, so that they understand society and its problems, and then use their training to improve it. So, in that context, what I want to say is that integrating vocational education is sort of a little different from the DNA of the present institutions in the country. For example, the present university, which does, which receives money. For example, if you take a central government institution, I'll take an example like Tata Institute of Social Sciences. They were running a lot of master's and PhD courses, and they were doing research and so on. And then suddenly AICT asked them to start vocational education. And then you see, it's just lucky that they developed a model which is so successful. And I will use that model as an example to show you what the challenges are needed. What we need is that, so how does it, University of Social Sciences train people for vocational education in BFSI or entrepreneurship or healthcare and so on? So what they did was they decided to bring on partners in a very unique public-private partnership, where the public is not the government, but public is the university, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And then they have used, so they brought 3 kinds of partners. They decided to go for a BVOC courses, which is apprenticeship based. So the industry partners are the main partners, where the students spend 5 days a week working from morning till night. They get paid. And then on Saturdays, they come to a nearby location, at a partner's location, where they can take their theory classes. So that's another kind of partner, which was called a hub partner. And in order to design courses, which this faculty did not have ability for, they actually brought in more partners who actually designed the courses. And how do you keep all these partners together? 2 important things. One, they used an ERP system. They used the ERP system very effectively to make sure that all these moving parts work together and work very well. And another which they did was to incentivize everybody through revenue share. So today we have this School of Vocational Education as the largest BVOC program in the country. Over 12,000 BVOC students, 28,000 students who've been certified since they started them and since they opened courses in 2014. Okay, just 6 years. They have admissions are just going on now for 2020. So we don't count 2020, but the first batch was 443 BVOC students, but the last year, 2019, was 6,200 students. So the demand is there, and if you give them good education, then more students will come by word of mouth. No advertisements. So it's very interesting that somebody worked out this model. Some few people got together and worked out this model, but it met with a lot of resistance because the university says, what are we doing in vocational education? We are a high-end research institute. Why should we be doing this? And all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that kind of thinking, but and also, of course, a lot of quality control issues, which TIS was handling with ERP and so on. Other models, I don't want to only talk about TIS, but other models include, universities where everything is organically sort of integrated. And one very good example of that is Dayalbag Educational Institute in Agra, which is doing a fantastic job. So during the policy, we were looking for good models, and we found many, and I'm sure there are many more. So I think the idea now for implementation of the policy is that we should actually, find the good models and just replicate them. For example, TIS is very, very replicable. And before I sign off, one of the big challenges I wanted to say is that this is actually changing the nature of the job of faculty, especially in the context of vocational education. Because, so far we have, and in TIS, we have faculty who are, tenured, they do teaching and research and so on. But for this, effort, School of Vocational Education, you had to bring in faculty who knew, whether if it was dialysis, then what is the healthcare, theory around how you do healthcare for dialysis patients, to teach that, or to teach BFSI or something. So they were hiring engineers, they were hiring, women who had stopped working after they had done their MBBS degree and so on. So the profile of faculty changes a lot. And then, of course, the work conditions also change a lot, because you're not anymore giving them tenured jobs. They're working as per contract. And then you have to make sure that the trainers are all trained and they have some idea of how to deal with young people, because these are all adolescents and older. So some sense of pedagogy. And so they have to work out all the training and so on. So all this, the university has to do. A university that is interested in integrating vocational education has to do, and has to have the mindset to do. So these are some of the main challenges that I wanted to touch upon. I'll discuss the rest during questions. I think that's probably better. I hope I have given you a sense of some of the challenges. Please ask if I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Leena. I mean, you not only showcase some of the challenges, but also given us enough thoughts on possibilities and what others are doing and how they're able to successfully integrate. And I'm sure there will be other models also in different parts of India.
Yes.
And it's important for us to learn from those experiences as we move forward. Is there any, have you come across any initiatives by any of these universities in terms of probably working with other universities, spreading these good practices, or is there any kind of an initiative at the Government of India level, to your understanding, where one could come and, understand and learn from each other on such initiatives?
So I would say that at the moment, most of it is person to person. Like you meet someone, you talk about it, and there's no sort of national coordinated effort as yet. But the MHRD has said that as part of the implementation of the NEP, they will appoint some lead institutions, institutions that are already doing very good work. So one set of institutions I did not mention was the skills universities. So we have skills universities, several of them, maybe 10, 11 in the country just now, at least one in each state, but not in all states. And then we have private skills universities like Symbiosis and Vishwakarma. And so Vishwakarma is probably funded by government of Haryana. So anyway, so we have those institutions also. So they are all talking to each other. But MHRD has said that they will create lead institutions so that those institutions can then go out and handhold. Mentoring is a very, very important aspect of the NEP. And so there will be a strong mentoring program where, you know, universities of vice chancellors of new universities are offered some handholding about what are their options to adopt models or to develop their own models. So.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Leena. We'll come back to you and
yes, sure.
a few more questions. Now, this webinar has been possible also because of the support of Bengaluru North University and more specifically the leadership of Professor T.D. Kemparaju. Professor Kemparaju is a PhD from Bengaluru University. Did his bachelor's and master's from the University of Mysore. Professor Kemparaju was earlier the registrar of Bengaluru University and also registrar of evaluation with Bengaluru University. He has been the chairman of the Department of Library and Information Science for 8 years, has published more than 60 research papers in various national and international journals and conference proceedings, has chaired several technical sessions and delivered over 15 keynote presentations at various national and international conferences. He has been the chairman of the Board of Studies and Board of Examination for over 12 to 14 years in Bengaluru University. He has guided 9 PhD students and currently guiding another 8 students with their PhD program. He has been a member of the NAC and the IQAC Committee of Bengaluru University. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. Thank you very much for all the support for this webinar, Professor Kemparaju. We would like to know your views on skill-focused education system and learning beyond the classroom.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kiran. Am I audible to you?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Leena Chandran and Dr. Ujjwal K. Chowdhury and Dr. Glenn and other distinguished panelists and also the faculty and the management of the Asian Institute of Design. Let me congratulate and appreciate the initiative taken by the Asian Institute of Design for organizing this webinar program on a very important focused theme with the skill development in India, new education policy, the National Education Policy 2020. I think the National Education Policy, which has been launched by our government, is a policy of a difference. Because during the last 7 decades more, we have come across different national policies. Each successive government has brought out the national policies in education. But this national policy of education of 2020, as I mentioned earlier, definitely it is a policy with a difference. So we are all, since belongs to a field of education, we are all observing, discussing, deliberating, researching on various aspects of developmental issues. And also, we know that education is a basic requirement for any kind of a developmental progress or developmental activities. So that is why in a changing scenarios, a lot of debate is going on, not only in our country, but also across the world. on education, its relevance, how to carry forward the mission of education, and what is the way forward to meet this very competitive environment, etc., and etc. So we in India is today one of the visible nation in the world. It is not only visible nation, it is one of the vibrant nation in the world. The whole world is looking at India. I think all other people can definitely agree with me. The world is looking at India because India has a great potential. It has a great strength. It has a great asset. Perhaps no country has in the world. That potential or that asset is a human capital. So the National Human Development Report I refer in 2019, 17, 18, and 19. And nearly about 56.8% of Indian population belongs to age group of 18 to 28 years. Okay. This is a very, very important component. And no country has this kind of a young population. And how to make use of this human capital? So to make use of this resource as a human capital, the more requirement is good quality education. Understand that the national education policy has totally realized this aspect and has brought out a very innovative proposals, initiatives. So since we are all living in the age of transition, age of change, change is part of life. Everyone wants change, everyone likes change. So in this kind of a changing society, what we are observing, we can find quite a good number of visible characters in the societies compared to previous things. Today's society is a quality consciousness society. Quality is much talking issue today in every sector, whether it is education, research, business, trade, social sector. These are quality consciousness societies. Second one is today's society is a knowledge-based society. There we can find a greater shift from a country like India has witnessed a shift from agriculture-based society to industrial-based society. Now it is in a knowledge-based society. And the third character feature of today's society is the technology-intensive society. Life and profession of every person. It is encroaching every activities of human life. Education is also not an exception. I think now we have realized during this Corona period how technology has come to the rescue for the purpose of this education delivery process. And the last and most important is today's society is a competitive society. Competition is the order of the days. So like that, because of this changing scenario of the societies in all the sectors, and education has a greater responsibility, it's an obligation to respond to these changes in the societies and also to meet the expectations of all these sectors, social, production, research, and also business, trade, commerce, and whatnot. So that is why still we are all struggling very hard in our country to answer a big question. The question always before us today is how far our education system is relevant today in the context of this changing transformation. That is why I mentioned in the beginning, there is a kind of a gap is widening rather than minimizing the gap. There is a kind of a mismatch between what kind of courses we are offering, what kind of teaching we are offering, what kind of programs we are offering, what the students are getting knowledge, etc. and etc. Now the time has come. Yes, we have to positively respond to this kind of a changing environment by making a kind of a changes in our teaching as well as the learning process. Education, I need not going to explain the meaning or the definition of education. education today is not only restricted towards acquiring knowledge, but today's the scope of education has been expanded beyond acquisition of knowledge. And today it requires knowledge and also skill. It is like the expectations of the employer is on two dimensions. Now I can say another dimension is also there. One is the graduates, what we are producing, what they know about a chosen field of activities. That is not only enough, but how they can perform in the day-to-day environment. And the third and most important component is that it requires, that is called as innovative abilities, analytical abilities, etc. So that is why today the education system has to think how to produce our graduates, how to train our graduates. Since I am working in a university system, I am talking in the higher education context. And how far our graduates are suitable for the current day job market. So on that line, yes, as a university, during the last 3 months, soon after the launching and acceptance of this, the National Education Report, the Karnataka government has taken a big lead. The first state in the country to take the lead to plan for implementation of these kind of ideas. So that is how, as Dr. Leena said appropriately, there is no depth of opportunities in our things. There is an opportunity, definitely ample of opportunities are there. As a Vice Chancellor, earlier as a professor, I had what we are interacted with our employers is that. So their expression is, or their opinion is that, yes, your graduates are good, they know the subject, know about economics, they know about other things. But what really they are missing is certain other issues. Not only knowing the subject, but addressing and also the kind of a real-time situation. That is the performing abilities. That has to be developed in our education system. So skill components is the most important priority components in our curriculum system. And as I mentioned in my topic, that is, one is the skill, second one is learning beyond the classroom. Education not only restricted learning inside the classroom, but we have to give more opportunities, create more opportunities and occasions. Our pedagogy, our logistics, our curriculum, teaching, learning environment, and also methodologies has to be changed, where we have to allow students to learn outside the classroom also. So this is how, where our education system has to focus on much towards acquiring knowledge. Because, as I said, a human capital is said that has to be properly streamlined, that has to be skilled, has to be reskilled, upskilled. That is possible provided if our education, teaching, training, and learning program is very important. And also, the another important issue is, in the context of higher education speaking, there's a good change, good proposal or recommendation in our national education policy in the context of research. All these days we are talking of research. Research only comes into picture after the completion of postgraduate. But now it is a good proposal has been initiated. At the graduate level, we have to inculcate the culture of research. But surprisingly, you look at, our kids are doing research at the primary level. My granddaughter says that they wanted to prepare a project. My mom has given me some project. I want to look at internet, take something and prepare some proposal to note, etc. You see, our postgraduate students are not preparing any kind of projects. Our kids in the primary school are preparing the projects. The culture of research is starting at the primary level, but not at the degree level, not at the high school level, not at the postgraduate level. Our education system all these days, research means after post-graduation, after MA, after MSc, after MCOM. So now the change has come. If we wanted to provide an opportunity for develop innovative attitudes, the culture of researchers has started from the early age itself. I don't want to take last point I want to mention is that saying all these things, that equally important is equipping our teachers. our teaching fraternity, our teacher training schools, our teacher training colleges. That is also one of the important components to find success in our education system. And these kinds of things has to be properly developed. And also what is important is every policy is having good proposals. What we say that day one policy from 1947 onwards till today. So each policies have brought out a good proposals on their own. But where we are missing, what is our failure? Our failure is at the time of implementation. Timely implementation, monitoring the implementation, measuring the success rate, and also resolving the certain any kind of issues, etc. This is very, very important. So finally, we say that the today's age of change, age of the transition, the changing environment definitely demands that our graduates, our students, learning a particular subject is not only enough. They have to learn across its own subject also. That is a multidisciplinary concept learning is very, very important. And also the learning beyond the classroom, outside the classroom. We have to, so that our educational curriculum or our courses, course structure has to be changed. Learning inside the campus environment and also learning outside the campus environment. All these things, if it's possible, definitely our universities can able to respond very positively to the changing needs of the job market. Thank you. If any other questions are there, I'm very happy to interact.
Thank you very much, Professor Kemparaju. Thank you very much for giving details and talking about the change and how the changes need to be, and particularly the aspect of learning beyond the classrooms and the changing role of the faculty members as well. Just the one small question. I mean, I know it's early days. The policy was announced very recently. But as the Bengaluru North University started looking at implementation, is there any specific plans that you already produced?
Yeah, I think our Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, who is also the Minister of Higher Education, so is already informed, and also in the video conference meeting, where each university has to constitute a kind of a small task force to study the proposals or the initiatives of this national education policy. And also in consonance to that, what kind of attempts or the initiatives we supposed to plan for coming days on a stage-wise manner, phase-wise manner, or incremental changes. So to develop all these things, so the government has already given a clear instruction, and we are also waiting for a kind of these parameters or the guidelines from both from the MHRD, and now it is called as the Department of Education officially, and also from the state government. And all the universities has geared up now. I think a lot of discussion is going on. Dr. Leena, Chandran, in our another one program where we also coordinated. So a lot of discussion is going on. And also even in the public awareness is more, and even employers' involvement is also becoming so encouraging, and we have to make use of it. That is why industry, academia, linkage, collaboration, we have to explore a lot of possibilities in that. So not only for taking the opportunities, but also to strengthen our education system to meet these changing needs of these societies.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are extremely delighted to have Professor Glenn. Professor Glenn is the Chancellor and the ex-Vice Chancellor of Martin Luther Christian University. He was a former Director of Planning at Manipal University. Professor Glenn is a medical doctor, a pediatrician. Did his MBBS from the Christian Medical College, Vellore. He is the American Board Certified in Pediatrics. He did his Master's in Public Health from Loma Linda University, USA. And he's a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics. He's also been involved in policy making. He was the State Planning Board member 2 terms in Meghalaya. He was in the Chief Minister's Task Force on Education, the Education Minister's Working Group to draft the Meghalaya State Education Policy. He was the chairman of the State Health Policy Drafting Group in Meghalaya and a member of the Meghalaya State Tourism Task Force. He has published more than 43 articles in peer-reviewed journals, delivered invited lectures and conference presentations nationally and internationally. Also been into policy research and writing, has been a fellow at Times of India, New Delhi, and a senior fellow at the Center for Policy Research at New Delhi. He has authored more than 100 articles and monographs on education policy in mass media and scholarly journals. He has authored books, one of which is Manipal and Beyond, a biographical book on higher education published by Bengaluru in 2015. He has also led consultancy projects on higher education in India, Nepal, Malaysia, and Dubai and Oman. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Glenn. I would like to find out from you your perspectives on skilled education and how the national education policy provides opportunities and also perhaps challenges in implementation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kiran. I'm really glad that AID has organized this webinar on this very important topic. I appreciated the opening remarks from Dr. Leena, some very relevant things that are useful for all of us to keep in mind. Also thank Professor Kemparaju for his comments. Dr. Kiran, it's okay, I'll just back up a little bit. As all of us know, there have been many policies that have been given to us from the time of independence. And for an old-timer like me, I distinctly remember the one that came out in 1948, called the Radhakrishnan Commission. And perhaps this was the most enlightened policy that we have ever had. And if you go through the 500 plus pages, and there's an accompanying volume as well, you'll see that actually there is a lot about skill development. It's just that we've not read these documents, but even worse than that, we've not implemented them in any way. If we look at the many policies that have come our way, the only one that I can think of that really had very innovative and radical ideas was the NCERT 2005 National Curriculum Framework. That was an excellent document. Apart from that, we've really not had much by way of good policy. So NEP 2020, what's so good about this policy? I think that first of all, it provides youth with a broad-based liberal arts, multidisciplinary education that will enable them to look beyond the confines of a single knowledge domain. Silo learning suffers from the danger of obsolescence. And in many of the so-called popular disciplines, take electronic engineering, for example, the obsolescence turnover or the obsolescence rate in electronic engineering is supposed to be something like 1.5 years. So learning suffers from providing our students with versatility in the job market. So broad-based skills are very much needed to adapt in a rapidly evolving marketplace. Now, we all know that with the COVID pandemic, there'll be a further churn in the job market, and we've got to come to grips with that. I should like to mention that in our university, we have already implemented NEP 2020. Our first batch of undergraduate students, which started on September 1 of this year, is a 3 to 4 year program in all disciplines that actually is very closely aligned with the national education policy. In other words, we already have the core domain, which makes up about 50% of the credits. We have the discipline domains, both in a major and a minor. So the policy, as you can see, is something that we are very impressed with. We believe that this is the most enlightened education policy that has ever come to this country. When we look at vocational skills, many people would have a rather narrow view. But some of the so-called skill-based vocational occupations is also something that we have integrated into this 4-year undergraduate program for all of our students. So our architects on our new campus, for example, they are building an arts and crafts department where all of our students will do and learn nitty-gritty things like how to change your fuse, okay? How to do it yourself carpentry, plumbing, electrician work, which will be useful in your own home. You know, in India, we are very poorly skilled with all of these things. And to find a plumber or an electrician is so difficult. On the other hand, in this arts and crafts, we will also have crafts which are very popular, but which are not being actually transmitted anymore. You know, the cultural arts and crafts. So pottery making, for example, weaving. So all of these things are also going to be part of our 4-year curriculum. So we are very much on board. When it comes to skills, what I find is one of the most striking things in the policy is the phrase 21st century skills. Now, we may think this is a very hackneyed phrase. What really does it mean? But the education policy really has listed these skills. It has defined these skills. Some people may say, how do we implement this? But I don't think that the policy document really needs to be a handbook. Each university must evolve its own model of 21st century skills. And this is very important because along the way in the last 60, 70 years, there has been a reductionism of education. We have created isolated disciplines, specializations, super specializations. Okay? But modern day problems, for example, climate change, requires an integration of knowledge, requires an integration of so many disciplines. You may be familiar with what J. Krishnamurti said. Wisdom is infinite, but we take hold of a twig and we think it is the whole tree. So the multidisciplinary approach to higher education is a new horizon for the educational system in the country. But when we talk about multidisciplinarity, when we talk about liberal arts education, we must remember that all of our teachers are trained in single disciplines. Suddenly, overnight, we can't expect them to become multidisciplinarian in their thinking. Professor Kemparaju very rightly said that teachers have to be reoriented and reskilled. So we've taken these 150 odd faculty members at our university, and we've already had 2 workshops. What is multidisciplinarity? What is a liberal arts education? In other words, unless they themselves have gone through assignments, okay, and have done assessments which look at multidisciplinarity, it's not going to happen just because we're using the word in seminars and webinars. At the other end of the spectrum from 21st century skills, we consider to be indigenous learning. I'm from a tribal community. 100% of our students and teachers are from tribal communities from all over the Northeast. So when we talk about skills, okay, we also want to include in this equation cultural skills, indigenous skills, tribal skills. In other words, these skills must help us to conserve our tribal heritage. Not just for the sake of romantic purposes, but because we believe things like the knowledge systems of, say, tribal medicine, okay, conservation of forests. As you may know, in Meghalaya, we have, surviving to this day, hundreds of sacred forests, where no one is permitted to take a stone or a leaf or fruit out of the forest. You can eat the fruit or you can drink the water while you're in the forest, but you cannot carry it out. So some of these conservation, which is our heritage and legacy, these actually get perpetuated by skill development and the maintenance of our learning in indigenous and tribal skills. So when we take a look at what is skill development, okay, you will actually find that NEP 2020 gives us a very broad canvas. We've talked about 21st century skills. We've talked about core skills. And I'm very pleased that the terminology in the NEP uses the word core skills to indicate the liberal education skills. It does not refer to the domain discipline. Okay? We tend to think of core skills as being the domain discipline. But the right terminology has been used, and we have to keep reminding ourselves, we have to keep telling our faculty, core skills means your liberal education subjects. Okay? But if higher education is to prepare students for life, they must be given a lens that will help them to view the world from scientific, artistic, and humanistic angles. So we cannot say that we will have the lens, okay, of my particular discipline only, because that will make me have a very narrow view of the world and make me a very narrow-minded person. Worse than that, in academics in India, there's a lot of turf protection. And we're finding it very difficult to share our time with other departments. For example, in our university, a minor has to be taken from another department. It cannot be from within the same department. And if this was a live session, I might have asked you to maybe respond and say, what do you think is the most popular minor in our university? The answer is music. From all departments, the number one choice for a minor in which they have to do 12 credits, and this is also following the UGC CBCS system, is music. Now, of course, in the Northeast, as some people may know, music is a big thing, okay? Music, but also not only entertains us, but also provides livelihoods. It also provides cultural identity. So these are some of the core skills that actually help the student to navigate their way through the social structures also of our tribal community. So that's very important. After core skills, the next thing that the NEP talks about is domain skills. Now, domain skills is something that we are all very familiar with. BBA, BSc, BBA, BSW, all of these things we are very familiar with. Okay? In our university, before NEP 2020, the domain skills took up about 2/3 of the credits. Now the major and minor together are less than 50%, and the major is only about 1/3 of the skills. In other words, what we are saying is that in the lineup and in the numeration of credits, we have really given priority to where the NEP requires us to give priority. So we have translated all of these things, okay, into these areas of skills, which we believe are really complementary and helps to make the student a well-rounded citizen. Now let's come to vocational skills. Talking about vocational skills, in the narrow meaning of the word. The NEP talks about grades 6 to 8, in which they will have vocational crafts such as carpentry, electrical work. So this is something that's allotted to school education. And they say gardening, pottery making, etc., etc. This will be continued from grade 9 to 12. Okay? All of this is very nice. We in the universities are very interested in what happens in high school education, because it is those products that are coming to the university. And sometimes we find that the transition is very difficult because school education has really not prepared them, okay, for university life. So it's a big change. And as we all know, they have physical challenges, from puberty into adulthood. They have social challenges going from childhood into adulthood. They have many of them moving from rural to urban areas. Some of them are leaving home for the first time. So all of these challenges, okay, we find that the first year in the university is making adjustments. They really have hardly any time to think about what they're going to do in the university and what they're going to do in the future. Now, I'm not generalizing this across the whole country. Okay? Maybe we have certain unique issues in tribal communities. Okay? Our university is very focused. We want to be meaningful to our tribal students. Whether it's applicable to universities across the board, that's not a big priority for us. So we realized that the first year in the university is a very key time of their university journey. How do we know that this is so stressful? We know that this is stressful because there is a large number of dropouts in the first year. If they're able to survive the first year, after that, hardly any of them drop out. And so we need to chart out for them really what life is going to be now that they have become an adult. And one of the biggest priorities that we make sure that they have a good grasp of is their career plans. When you lay down the career plans, then university education has some meaning. It's put into some perspective. It makes sense because it ties up to the rest of their life. And we find that for our university students, they want to make sure that the money that they are paying really gives them a spectrum of skills that will enable them not only to get a job, but to become a useful citizen, to be someone whom they can look up to themselves. I want to be someone whom I can look up to. So these are the things. In our university, for example, in the first semester, the first 5 months, they can visit all of the departments, spend time in all of the departments. They don't have to choose BBA, BSW in the first 6 months. They can choose after the first 6 months and they will not lose any time. So we give them a good foundation program in the first semester, which actually revolves around life skills and career skills. Now, we're able to do all of this because the new education policy has provided room for innovation, room for university agency and autonomy. It also has given individual teachers, space for their own ideas. So that's in the NEP is that it gives teacher autonomy. So teacher autonomy extends not only to making of the curriculum, the pedagogy and the assessment. And in our university from day one, we have had teacher-led assessment. Okay? We don't have externals for the undergraduate. So with these few words of introduction, I just want to say that the national education policy is something that we are delighted with. It's something that we look forward to its full implementation. And we have very happily and very gladly embarked on our journey from this year itself. UGC has announced that undergraduate courses can open from November 1, but we opened on September 1. So we're all gung-ho and we've already made a good start. And Shillong may be a faraway place for many of you, okay? But those who have not been to Shillong, we invite you, please come to Shillong, be our guest and spend some time with our university, visit with our students. We'd really love to talk to you. We'd love to see what your ideas are and learn from you. And I'm looking forward to the rest of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. It's quite a good news to know that you've already embarked on that journey. I mean, students are already getting the advantage of the new systems, the new policy. It's also interesting to note that, when we talk about vocational education skill base, it's already narrow, and you're talking about ultra specialized, some specific skill. But you're now talking about not just, and hence the maximum discussion is regarding, okay, are you having a good program where you're also involving the requirements of industry or at best workplace? But you're talking about skill as social skills and the societal requirements and the citizenry, which is a much broader way of looking at skills rather than, again, being very narrow focused in terms of vocational, as usually the discussions are. So it's quite interesting to and enlightening to know about that broad spectrum that we have in mind as skills, and then perhaps this issue of vocational versus higher education, etc., will go off, and we all are looking at education rather than anything else. But just to get a small idea, now that you've started implementing, and it'd be good for all of us to know, What are the kind of challenges that you have confronted as you started this, both from the teachers, faculty members, as well as from students' side?
Yes, Kiran. First, I'll talk about the comment that you made earlier about getting students ready for industry. Now, I have a problem with that concept. Okay? Why should universities, okay, be factories for creating robots for industry? In other words, we are becoming handmaiden of industry. Tomorrow they will say, now you change the curriculum because we have some new machines in our factory. Okay? Now, which is not to say that employment in industry is unimportant. It's important. Okay? But I think it's more important to give a student versatility and adaptability, because we know that even in India, more than half of graduates are not working in the domain that they studied in. In a recent webinar, Fareed Zakaria, he said, a liberal arts education is not preparing you only for your first job. It's preparing you for your second job and for your third job. And these may be very different kinds of jobs. So we want a student to be prepared, okay, to work in industry for sure, but also to work in many other possible areas. Some of these we don't even know about yet because the world is changing so rapidly. Coming back to your second question about difficulties. Yes, there are difficulties. Okay? I would say that the greatest difficulty is mindset of teachers and preparedness of teachers. Okay? When someone has been trained himself or herself in a single discipline, it's not that easy suddenly to have a broader mindset and say that other disciplines are as important as my own. Already in universities, we have Department of Social Work, Allied Health, English, Music, Environment. We're already so compartmentalized. Okay? So one of the things that we have done is teacher orientation with a couple of workshops, and we have gotten people from the community, okay, more than from industry to help us conduct these workshops. That's one. The second thing is that we are rearranging our departments into clusters of under a particular faculty. So this is the first step. But we are hoping in a few years from now that we will not have any departments. Okay? So each teacher will have a particular expertise. Each teacher will bring something to the core domain and to the major and minor. Okay? If you see carefully, even in research and PhDs, okay, the NEP talks about multidisciplinarity. In other words, you may have a PhD, okay, in which you have no particular discipline, but you've addressed a social problem, okay, that requires multidisciplinary inputs. So at the end of the day, it's hard to say that this PhD fits into any particular discipline. So these are some of the difficulties that we know we will face in the years to come. Okay? But it requires a refreshing of our mindset. Okay? The second thing you asked about is how are students viewing this? Okay? We also had one seminar with the students. Now, unlike the American universities, the students were not willing to have something called a Bachelor of Liberal Arts, okay? Because we knew that such a degree would be unrecognizable when they go for a job interview. Okay? So we decided that we would keep the nomenclatures of BBA, BSW. So all these nomenclatures are in place, BTTM for tourism management. Okay? But to be very frank, these are very early days for us. And if there are going to be difficulties that students may encounter, I guess we'll know about that only as we proceed on this journey. Okay? But in general, there is a nice acceptability. There's an upbeat mood about all of this. And I guess we will encounter problems. That's going to be part and parcel of the journey, but we're looking forward to everything.
Thank you very much, Prof. I mean, it's revolutionary in terms of the ideas and the ways in which you're taking this forward. So congratulations on that. And we look forward to learning from the experiences that you're going to have in your institution, the university. Thank you very much. Thank you. Professor Ujjwal K. Chowdhury is a Pro-Vice Chancellor at ADAMAS University and the Dean, School of Media, Communication and Fashion. Professor Ujjwal is a leading media and communication academic. He was earlier the Dean of Media at initially Symbiosis University, Pune, subsequently at Amity, the University in Mumbai, Whistling Woods International at Bombay, and Pearl Academy of at Delhi and Mumbai. He's known for his convergent approach to media education, starting from an integrated, broad-based learning to focus specialization at the top. He's a known face in TV, studio debates, and a regular writer in Indian media. He had earlier been employed with Business India TV, Z News, Times of India Group, and the WHO media. Professor Ujjwal, thank you very much for joining this webinar. And we would like to know more about your take on the new education policy and specifically about the implications on the media, communication, and design skills side. You're still muted, Professor.
Sorry. I was so engrossed in the last talk that I forgot that I have to unmute. So it was very erudite discussions that's going on from someone who participated in the policy framing to two other gentlemen who are at the helms of their own universities and implementing, and very nice. And I appreciate Asian Institute of Design to have brought speakers from all over the country, from various parts of the country, from Shillong to Bangalore. It goes via Calcutta, by the way. So it's good, interesting to listen to all of you here. Yes, if I have to tell, as I was telling before the show started, if I had to say one aspect of one policy of the government, which has been, in my opinion, the best policy as far as the statement of policy is concerned of the current government, then it has been the new education policy. And I give credit to Dr. Kasturi Rangan and team, including Leena ma'am, to have come out with such a policy. Initially, it was 260 pages plus, I think, the original writing, which has been distilled to 61 pages document that is in public domain just now. So looking at the various skill aspects, yes, interdisciplinarity has been mentioned by the two honorable Vice Chancellor and Chancellor earlier. At our university at ADAMAS in Kolkata, we've also started implementing this session-wise, this major minor concept. And very rightly, as told by Dr. Glenn, the minor has to be from a different school, not just a different department. In our case, it's a different school. So a student who wants to be a cyber lawyer is studying in law can take a minor, or ideally would take a minor of computer engineering from the engineering school. A management student studying MBA marketing would take a minor from the media school in brand communication, for example. And as also told by Dr. Glenn, there are many youngsters who take music here as well in Bengal as their minor. So music to microbiology, that's what we say. Choose any subject from outside your school as minor. Secondly, the aspect of integrated learning and doing away with this Brahminization and Sudrafication of art, science, commerce, science being the Brahmin and humanities being the Shudra. This whole concept that has been there for the last 7 decades here in India is an offshoot of the British education system, and hence is being done away with, at least in the policy document, and I really welcome it very much. And this doing away with education and vocational training differentiation, I really appreciate this approach of opposing reductionism. And as Dr. Glenn has said, reductionism or reducing education to these sort of watertight compartments. That is, one is scholastic education, the other is vocational training. This is the Brahmin, that is the Shudra. This is completely stupid. And doing away with this is very right. Yes, rightly, the new education policy talks about critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, curiosity, and communication, the 5 C's of education going ahead. I do totally agree. And in tune with that, we have brought in design thinking as a compulsory course spread over 3 semesters, so that it is not, it is not rushed, it's understood properly, and there is a project at the end of the design thinking course. We've also brought compulsory professional studies, which is to develop this emotional intelligence, foreign language learning, and communication skills, from group discussion, from teamwork to leadership. So all this together under the umbrella of professional studies, that's now the compulsory course that runs across all the semesters, not in just rushed into the final semester because they have to face an interview of the company, not like that, as a part and parcel of the whole learning. Yes, school onwards live projects, that's a great concept, particularly internships and vocational training from class 5 to 12 that has been proposed here. And 4, I really appreciate the institutional recognition given to pre-education, or rather toddler education or preschool education. So you have, starting from age 3, you have up to class 2, 5 years, then there is a public exam, then at 5, after class 5, then after class 8, then after class 12, 4 public exams. We had class 5 public exam in my childhood. That was in Bengal. It was called Britti Porikha after class 5, which was abolished later. So good that is coming back. That was a certain state governments had it because education happens to be in concurrent list of subjects in the constitution, as you know. So I appreciate these developments. Traditional arts and workmanship focus on deep skills. Dr. Glenn has talked about it. I'm not spending time on that. He's talked eloquently about it. I totally agree. Traditional skills must be brought in along with vocational skills. And as Honorable Vice Chancellor of the North Bengaluru University has rightly said, that the teachers training, or in my opinion, the mentors further development, that has been also brought through the new education policy, continuous professional development CPT of teachers, which has focused on digital mentoring and teaching, flipped classroom skills, content creation. And I must bring here this point. Going on Zoom or going on Google Class and going on MS Teams and talking just the way I talked or we talked in the classroom is not online teaching. That is an online lecture, but that's not an online teaching. Online teaching has synchronous and asynchronous, both aspects. We only know the synchronous part because we are habituated with that. For 70 years, we have been doing synchronous teaching. And this sage on the stage is a part of the character of the teachers, unfortunately. So being a sage on the stage, going up, this is my opportunity, this is my class. So I give a lecture, you all listen. Nicely, you listen without shaking your heads. That's not actually internalization of learning. And hence, this whole concept of teacher, in my opinion, will be replaced by the concept of mentor. Teachers teach in the classroom, mentors teach within and beyond the classroom. Teacher is a sage on the stage, is fixated on a structured syllabus. Mentor is an aggregator of knowledge, not a sage on the stage. And starts from a structured syllabus, moves on to organic syllabus, depending on the learner's interests. Because every learner is a new story. It's a new story. Just as the DNAs of 2 human beings are not the same, the learning curve of 2 individual learners cannot be the same. The teachers are fixated on examinations, finishing the syllabus and marks and evaluation. A mentor is focused on lifetime use, or at least practical use of whatever is being learned or taught. And this taught word, I don't want to bring in mentor. So a mentor is more an inspirer, a motivator, than a scholastic person who is just transforming an amount of information from one brain to the other. So there is a new model, and similarly, student is different from a learner. Learner learns inside the classroom and beyond the classroom. Starts from a structured syllabus, goes on to organic learning. Starts from learning from the mentor, but also learns online through peers, through experiences, through projects. And the biggest thing that the learner has to learn is learning to learn, because there is no lifetime career anymore. Going ahead, there is no lifetime career anymore. And hence, it's important that one learns to self-learn, because there will be a lot of new things that you have to learn ahead. So continuous professional development, which is 50 hours of CPD annually, has been mentioned in the new education policy, which is a great thing. Competency-based learning, experiential learning, arts integrated learning, sports integrated learning, storytelling based learning. These are some of the other things that have been mentioned, and I totally appreciate these aspects. I always use something concept even before NEP for a long time, since the time I was Dean of Symbiosis, that time onwards, that the model should be experiential, brick and portal. The portal aspect was very low 12 years ago, 14 years ago, but still at the time also I was telling, and it has been already mentioned in my introduction, I believed in convergence. And convergence, one of the aspect is to bring learning by doing, experiential, with learning in the classroom, brick and mortar, with learning digitally, click and portal. And all the three things together converge, experiential, brick and portal. This must be the way going ahead. Having said this, liberal education subjects as core skills is another good aspect, because it opens up the mind, the vista of learning to multiple ways. You know, we think science is physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics, but science in real life actually is integrated. Even this, for example, this mobile, we have engineering like civil, mechanical, electrical, electronic, computers. This is a mix of all forms of engineering. There is an electrical part of it. It runs on power, by the way. There is an electronics part of it. And there can be IoT, and the chip and all that is part of that. There is obviously a computer science part of it. This is a machine. There's a mechanical engineering part of it. And it is produced in a factory. And you need a particular setup, a civil engineering setup to produce it. So any product, this is for ease of our learning, that we make watertight compartments. Real life does not function in watertight compartments. And that's why even art, science, commerce cannot be differentiated that way. Another aspect, I must say, project-based learning. We have also brought in that in our university. One starts the first semester with a project being introduced. And the projects, there could be 40 different projects, and a learner chooses his project according to his or her own interest. Someone may be making a car, someone may be making a drone, someone may be making a feature film, someone, depending on the interest that the person has. Someone may be having a project which solves a traffic problem. So you start with that project, and throughout the education time, as you keep learning, you keep applying that knowledge in that project. By the last semester, you have done the project. The big condition is it cannot be a project for marks and classroom. It has to be a marketable project. There has to be a taker, an NGO, a government, and therefore projects are usually given with a probable, it's a live project. That means it with a probable taker. The taker has to be there, and the taker finally, and therefore feedback of the taker also keeps on coming. And finally, that project must go to solve an actual problem. So these are some of the positives, and I really salute these positives. I'm happy that Leena ma'am is here, who has been a parcel of this particular policy. Having told that, let me also raise questions. I would like to be a conscientious, independent academic who would like to raise questions if I feel those questions are there. Number one, enactment of the law. So this is a great policy, a great vision statement. I'm waiting for a law to get teeth to this policy at this point of time. Yes, there is the promise of one single higher education authority, doing away with other multiple competing sometimes and different higher education bodies, AICT and this council and that council. So one single body we are expecting, that has to be a law. 6% funding, that has to be a law. Rajiv Gandhi's education policy also talked about 6% funding. This education policy also talks about 6% funding. Completely right. I'm totally agreeing to that. The top developed and the major developing countries, 80 countries data I have seen, the public education allocation of fund moves from 8 to 18%, different countries. So if at all 6% comes in India, it's in the right direction. It hasn't come. 70 years plus history, our funding of education, public education has not crossed 3% yet. It's 2.9% at this point of time. And this additional money, in my opinion, should be spent for digital connectivity, but that's another issue. Third point, ABC, what do you call? Bank of credits, academic bank of credits. Great idea to listen to it. I don't know in operations how it will operate. How will I take, if I am a student, how will I take one course credit from North Bengaluru University, one course credit from the university in Shillong and 1 crore credit from my university, then who will be giving me the final degree and how? I mean, there are several other questions that can be raised. The answer to that, I'm given by some people, is that maximum number of courses would be from one institute, so that institute will give the degree. How can that institute necessarily vouch for the courses done from other institutes or other universities? So that's something, a gray area. Next point, education is in state government. Education is in concurrent list. State government officially, constitutionally has same power as the union government. The policy is declared by the union government without, just before the policy, taking state governments to, into close confidence. Yes, state governments at one point of time, long back, 3 or 4 years ago, did give suggestions to the government, which were given to Dr. Kasturi Rangan also, I'm sure, but perhaps it was important to bring the state, just as in GST Council, the state governments have their say and membership, similarly it should have happened there. And now there is a question that has been raised here by Nasir Qureshi in the questions. He has referred to the public schools doing better than private schools in Delhi, and allocation of funds and methodology taken there in Delhi as an example. Yes, I appreciate that. That's the only government in India, state or center, which has double-digit budget for education. 26% of the state budget of Delhi is for education. No other state has crossed even 6%. Tamil Nadu has good 6%. I'm not sure of all the states, but some I know. Kerala has 5.9, Bengal has 5.1. So 5% many states have crossed, but 10 crossing is only for Delhi. And I understand that good infrastructural and training of the faculty have started there as well, and results are there to see. Last and the most important question for me is the addressing the digital divide. While we are speaking today, on this day, 24th of September, 283 million students are there from class 5 to PhD, to post-graduation, not calculating up to class 4 and not calculating PhD. 283 million according to government statistics, that is 28 crores plus. 28% of them, around 8 crores, are on digital education already. The universities that we address here are already on the digital education. 21% students are on digital connection, but not digital education. They have WhatsApp, they have Facebook, but they are still not able to come onto Google Classroom or Zoom or whichever platform. And they are not in a flipped classroom situation at this point of time. The remaining 51%, and that's hoping 15 crore students, completely for the last 190 days are totally out of even 1 ounce of education. There is no education for 15 crores. I'm sitting in an air-conditioned studio. Sitting here, I won't understand the pain of them. There's a story of a boy and a girl, a brother and a sister in Kerala, who have committed suicide. They're students of class 10 because some of their classmates are already online. Their parents couldn't afford them the gear for online education, their smartphone or laptop. At this point of time, there is a huge disconnect on digital connectivity with these people. And there are many other stories. I do not want to get into how this is creating troubles, how people are selling their buffaloes and cows to buy smartphones, how people are selling their vegetable cart or small shops to buy smartphones. I mean, the source of income is being sacrificed for the child. This is happening across the country at this point of time. And we in comfortable zones, we sometimes have a glossy attitude towards this, but that's reality for half the crowd. 51% of the population. So government has to spend 3% more, and this money must go for digital connectivity. Roti, kapda, makan, siksha, or swasth. These 5 things are considered to be basic for dignified life. The 6th thing now is digital access, digital connectivity, as almost as important as food and clothing and shelter. And if that has to be a reality, BharatNet is being discussed by the government. We are waiting to see that, the nature and the cost of that. But it's important, just the way the government gave colored TVs at one point of time to panchayats. Bicycles were given to girl students who passed class 10 to encourage their higher education in the villages by many state governments, whether it's Bengal, Assam, or Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, many governments did it. Today, it is important for the government to give low-cost tabs, low-cost smartphones and laptops to schools and families. It's very important. Otherwise, first the poor girls will go out of education, because when there is a scarcity of resource, the boy child gets it before the girl child. That's the sad situation in the country. Then the boy children also would go out of education. Just as digital divide, there will be huge educational divide going ahead. So there's the need for even the corporate sector to come forward. CSR, 2% of profits have to be given for CSR according to the law, which is a great law. I appreciate the government for doing that. And this 2% now needs to be for 2 years to be spent in creating digital connectivity across the country throughout the hinterland of the nation. Telecom companies must give, just like students have bona fide students with iCards, have concession in buses and trains, there must be concessions in net packs for teachers and students. And more particularly for the hinterland, the villages, teachers and students. Even civil society, people like us, our universities, wherever there is a good infrastructure, the hours or the days of the week when we don't operate, that must be available for school students and college students of the government schools and colleges where the connectivity or the resources are poorer. There has to be digital transformation, digital training, particularly for the larger mass of students and teachers of the government schools and colleges. This is very significant at this point of time. Otherwise, we will be creating another caste system in education. We, those who have resources, where digital connectivity is good, 100% digital education is going on, are the Brahmins, and the poor schools and colleges of the country, particularly in the hinterland and controlled by the government, they will be the Shudras. That cannot happen, that cannot be allowed to happen. So I appeal, if we have to, yes, skills are important, and I have already raised the points which are very good. Other speakers have also told the points which are very good for raising the skill status, skill in a quantum. But it's important also first to connect to people before you can train them, teach them skills and education in general. With respect to media, you have asked, I can take that up very briefly. I've already taken quite some time. I would like to, on the media front, I would like to say this standalone media education, you go and study journalism alone, you go and study film alone, you go and study fashion alone in design, for example, or communication design alone, or advertising alone. This whole approach will have to go. We'll have to be introduced to the broad gamut, a convergent, where basic media communication design, basic principles of business and management, information technology, application of IT in media and design, all these must be introduced at the beginning stage, at the starting stage. From that convergent approach, one can, suppose it is media. So these convergence, the next level, next semester, can only focus on media. The third semester can only focus on journalism. The fourth semester can be a specialization either in web journalism or television journalism or political journalism or business journalism, depending on each university's course or plan. So there has to be a broad introduction or convergent base, and from there, specialization coming up. From generalized background, a liberal background, to a very specialized niche, because niche is also important at the apex. So horizontal convergence to vertical convergence to niche. Niche is the somewhere focusing on. So this is something that I would like to speak with respect to media and communication education. Any further questions coming up, we would discuss that. Thank you, and back to the moderator, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Ujjwal. Thank you very much. And it's very important to look at the convergence, look at a broad-based education, whatever be the sector. And I think it's also important to focus on the student when it comes to education, and not necessarily on institutional policies and administrative inconveniences. So if there is an ABC and that's supported by the National Qualification Framework, which the policy talks about, I think it shouldn't be because the institutions have a problem. It should be about the students. And as long as students want it, it should be provided. And I think as we move more and more towards the student-oriented way of how learning happens and how they want it, I think that is possible. And we can possibly learn a little bit from the Bologna experience, etc. I just want to raise one question to all the panel members, just the one small, if you can answer in 20 seconds, kind of, starting with Dr. Leena. We have been talking about the national education policy, Professor Glenn is talking about already implementing it, but there are students in the system already who must be in the first year or second year and third year and fourth year. Would you like to address them and assure them about possibly, okay, things are only starting, but you don't really have to worry. Would you like to say something to the students, because we got the audience, which consists of a lot of students, existing students as well. Dr. Leena, just a short 20-30 seconds, please. You're muted, Dr. Leena. You're muted. Your microphone is muted.
Yeah. So Dr. Glenn has already given the answer that, universities should begin as quickly as possible. And private universities have the head start, they can start. And universities by definition are supposed to be autonomous. So many universities can start. For colleges, it might be a little bit more difficult. But in the context of skills, I'd like to take up on what Dr. Glenn said, that, students need to understand careers. And for that, we need to give them career counseling and guidance. This is a very, very important part of skill development going forward. And, and for vocations, maybe vocational aptitude tests, which can be done online and so on. Industry doesn't want people who are job ready. They want young people who can adapt to whatever the industry wants from them. There used to be 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, industry wanted job ready people. Teach them Microsoft this product so that I can employ them. But not anymore, because they are also realizing that things are changing fast. So you need students who are adaptable. And students need to get that message. We are trying to build citizenry. We are trying to build their strengths, internal strengths, their personality, their ability to collaborate, critical think. That's the key of the policy. Thank you. And for the students too, yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leena. Professor Kemparaju, in 20-30 seconds, a message for the students, existing students. Your microphone is muted. Your microphone is muted. Yeah. Not really. Yeah. Professor, your microphone is still muted, so we can't hear you. There's some technical issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So, Dr. Kiran, would you please repeat your words once again?
Okay. My question is, we have the national education policy and a lot of this implementation will happen. Some of the universities have started, you're planning for it, and it will be implemented over a period of time as well. But for the existing students, do you want to point out some factors or give a message as to how they could get ready in the short term as the policy gets implemented, and it will probably take a few years for its full-scale implementation?
Yes, I got the point. And now the existing students, I think the calendar of events, the academic calendar for this year is still not very certain, as Professor is rightly pointed out. Anyway, we are geared up to start our calendar of events from 1st of October. And now the UGC and also Ministry of Education is telling me November. Okay, whatever may be, depends on the situation. The national government and the state government too has to come across with taking the decision. So the onus on our part is, yes, we have a greater responsibility now. The students which are already existing with us, we have to orient them towards the spirit of these national education policies. And we have already taken the initiative that, so what is a kind of a vocational course support? For example, graduate level, we have already taken the initiative. A student who is already taking a course in BA, we are going to provide a diploma in a vocational kind of a course. A student who is already learning BSc will be allowed to take one additional diploma, etc. So that by the time in a 3-year duration, where the student completes the degree courses, in addition to getting a degree, he can get additional 1 or 2 diplomas that will help them to get a job. So this kind of flexibility is already there in the UGC. I think many of the universities have already been implemented. And the one thing is that since these are all possible much in the undergraduate, there's a larger percentage of the students are studying at the undergraduate level, and the colleges at the undergraduate level, particularly government colleges, aided colleges, they have to come forward for the purpose of introducing that kind of a value addition type of courses. That will be very important. Coming to this higher level of education at the postgraduate level, we have already strategized our programs that our postgraduate students, as I say, MA and economics students, where they can have an additional course in the commerce. But very unfortunately, what's happening is that though the student in MA in economics is not having any kind of a knowledge or a skill in accounting aspects. But when he goes to the business field, what is required is, in addition to economy knowledge, he needs an accounting knowledge, taxation knowledge, and also these other type of little bit of marketing strategies, etc. So that is how we have to bring all these kinds of issues so that we can develop some kind of a multidisciplinary character in our curriculum, multidisciplinary character in our teaching, learning, and also multidisciplinary views, which has been interactive teaching. Now, teaching means not only just delivering a lecture or kind of a presentation like that. What is the need of the hour is that, what is the need of the hour is to develop a kind of the interactive learning approaches, interactive learning provisions has to be provided. So that many of these type the students, but this very much is required, that a lot of ideas are there with our younger minds, but if we are not exploring them, we are not providing an opportunity. Unless we create an opportunity for interactive approaches, so the talent of the student views or their problems or their doubts that not be cleared. So that is, these are some of the very critical issues where we have to take in a kind of a learning process. It was in the teaching, interactive teaching, as well as in the learning process. So these are some of the things, certain preliminary steps we have taken, that we are already working on that line, because since our university comes under the state universities, the government universities, and a few steps have been initiated, and in coming days, definitely we have a larger responsibilities. We will carry forward to see the reality of the very mission of the National Education Policy 2020.
Professor Glenn?
Your question, Dr. Kiran, about what do we do with present students?
Yes.
There is a one-word answer. Yes. So
you're like one-word answers.
There's a one-word. Yes. The one-word answer is individualization. Now, when students join our university on the first day, we start making individual profiles. So each student goes through a battery of evaluations, multiple intelligences, learning styles, personality. One of the things that we do is ask each student, what's your career plan? So let's say you have 30 students in MSW, and on the first day of class, I'm asking them. One says, I want to work in TB. Another one says, I'm going to start an orphanage. Someone says, I want to do a PhD and become an academician. Okay? 5 or 6 of them will say, I don't know. Okay? Some will say, I want a government job. Say, I'm a gender person. I want to work in the State Commission for Women. So now we take note of their individual career plans. So the person that says, I want to work in a TB hospital goes through the same MSW as all of the other students. But when it comes to their project, their fieldwork, and their posting, we see to it that they have one posting in a TB hospital or in a TB community project. So we take them semester by semester, okay, asking them along the way, okay, are you getting what you need to become, okay, an expert in TB so you can give your best when you go for the job interview? Some of them will change their mind along the way. Now, that's also possible. So the one-word answer, Kiran, to you is individualization. We tend to look at students as a collective. We say class of students. We say cohort of students. Okay? but individualization, doesn't get the importance that it deserves.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Ujjwal?
Yeah, for the current students who are seniors, final year or penultimate year, they cannot have a change of syllabus, as you understand. They have got admitted with a particular syllabus and all, and it would there would be a lot of challenges if you really change syllabus. For them, what is the current issue is that because we are in digital situation, in the sense lockdown and all, and we'll be opening, but still then it will be blended. So let them get accustomed to synchronous and asynchronous, both types of learning digitally. So we are encouraging a lot of online courses. One is the MOOCs, which are massive open online courses, which are available like SWAYAM and many others. Even IIT has MOOCs and all. Then we have started our own online courses as well, which we call as proprietary online courses by our own faculty. Some of the subjects have started. And then there is paid online courses for which we have taken lump license in a bulk, like Coursera. And many of these courses students have started doing. At this point of time, Coursera has informed us that our course completion rate is quite high. 11,000 courses have been completed in the last 3 months by various students in Coursera. So that's one for the existing students. For the new batch, which has just come in, September 1 onwards, online classes have started. Physically, the classes perhaps can be done from 1st November, because that's what the UGC has yesterday, 2 days ago told. So these students, one, they're already studying online, but we have already introduced the major minor, as I've told earlier. We've also introduced this design thinking course, and we've also introduced a management diploma for every engineering student, along with BTech, a management diploma. So there are certain value added things, and professional education, which I've also told earlier, certain value additions we are doing. But we need to tell everyone to open up their mind. The spirit of liberal education must be brought in today as we go ahead. That's my suggestion on the current students. There has been a question by Dr. Manojit Devnath on what about autonomous colleges, and Dr. Leena has rightly said they can start implementing many aspects. One of the challenges these autonomous colleges may have is on the issue of funding. So while they have academic autonomy, there has to be also financial autonomy often leads to reduction of funds from the government usually. So there has to be self-finance courses, that's the focus. But we also need to understand public finance of education is also necessary in a big way, autonomous or otherwise. 2% we give education cess. So public finance really has to enhance. We are looking forward to that as well.
Thank you. Is there a latest question? Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a complete privilege listening to all the panelists. Very good ideas. Happy to note that the implementation has already started in Shillong. New plans coming up. Thank you very much, Dr. Leena, for giving us views regarding not only the policy making, but also how other institutions are trying to implement that. So thank you very much for that. Professor Kemparaju, thank you very much for your words and the support that you're providing. Thank you very much, Professor Glenn, and thank you very much, Professor Ujjwal. And thank you very much, team AID, for all the coordination, all the work. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone, and thanks to the organizers. It has been a very learning experience, and I hope we go back with a very well-rounded, multi-angle learning about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
you
you all.
So many best practices learned, which we can implement now.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran, for your very important role. Thank you.
Moderation.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Hanif, for really taking this up in the right earnestness.
Thank you. Be in touch, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
ಏನಂತ ಸರ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್